Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rob Shmuel, with you with this week's 10-minute Torah. Now, I've been doing these little fireside chats, if you will, these blogs or vlog, if they say a video blog, whatever, 10-minute Torahs for quite a number of years. But I don't think I've ever, in that time, supported or promoted a movie. My wife and I just saw a movie last night. It's called As They Made Us. It was produced and I don't think directed, but it was executive produced. And usually movies are executive produced by a number of people, and my understanding is that they contribute money and therefore they get to be an executive producer. But it was the work of Mayim Bialik, who was on, what was it, the Big Bang Theory, and apparently she's a neuroscientist as well. But of course, she's an entertainer as well, and of course very Jewish. And basically, it tells the story of a couple, and the couple is played by Dustin Hoffman and Candice Bergen, and it really centers around a Jewish family, and Dustin Hoffman is kind of at the last stages of his life. And it also stars Diana Argon or Agron. I'm not sure which. I think she's going by Agron these days. But you may remember her from the show Glee. She was also in the movie I Am Number Four, and also another Jewish movie, Shiva Baby. But what I liked about the movie is, beside the fact that it was a very touching story and it was very well done and the acting was wonderful, the story was very nice too, is that there was a lot of Judaica in there. In the movie, Diana Agron, her character, has a couple of young boys, and at night it shows them doing the Shema before they go to bed. The funeral, never mind, I don't want to spoil it, but there was a lot of Judaica in it, a lot of Yiddishkeit, and that's nice. Another movie that I liked about a year or so ago was Seth Rogen, American Pickle, where he plays himself and his grandfather that somehow gets preserved in a pickle barrel. Yeah. Sometimes you got to suspend your disbelief, but there was a lot of Judaic in that as well. And it's really nice. You've got a lot of the Spanish channels. You've got Black Entertainment. Up until recently, you had the Logo channel for people of a homosexual persuasion, which I think has kind of changed. There's a couple of Jewish channels on TV. You got the Jewish Broadcasting System and Jewish Life TV. One of my pipe dreams years ago was, wouldn't it be great to have a Jewish movie channel where either there was some reference to Jews or it was Israeli. There's been some good Israeli movies out there, but maybe somebody will make it happen. Okay, let's talk about Mishpatim. Okay, judgments. So we just had the Ten Commandments last week in Yithro, and now Mishpatim, it goes into a whole litany of seemingly unrelated mitzvah. And let's establish right off the bat, I know a lot of people use the word mitzvah for a good deed, but basically the word mitzvah is a commandment. That's what the word actually translates from Hebrew to English. Now, years ago, at another venue, I used to do sort of a kids Saturday morning, a little, junior congregation thing. And one of the kids, and this was a kid, this was like a 9-year-old boy, asked me if all the other commandments basically are subdivisions or subsets or come from or parts of those 10. And I thought that was a very astute question, which I complimented the young gentleman on that observation. And in fact, in the Art Scroll Chumash, which is the one I'm reading this year, they actually talk about that. They say that if you look at those 10 commandments and then look at all the other 603 commandments, you will see relationships between those commandments and those first 10 that were given to Moses. So it's interesting and probably very fitting that the commandments that follow the 10 starts off with what? So if I were to add, let me pause for a minute and just think about which commandments you would think would be appropriate to follow those 10 out of all those 603. Okay, so they talk about how to treat slaves, or quote unquote, I prefer the word bondspeople. All right. These are not enslaved people necessarily. These are people that either are paying off a judgment, like thieves that stole something, and they were awarded, the person from whom they stole was awarded the case, and the person has to pay back either what they stole and a penalty, which usually can be double. Sometimes it can be triple, depending on the offense and the seriousness of it. Um, but also somebody who maybe is not doing very well in business. They're not very good farmers or cattle or livestock herders. So they need some time to get back on their feet. So they basically sell themselves to somebody who will basically give them a job and a place to stay for 6, 7 years, or any amount of years up to the time of the Shemitah year when they're released. And that way they're released with gifts and some resources to get back on their feet. That's another one. A third thing, and we don't talk about this very much, is a young girl, one who is below the age of puberty, below the age of 12, who is also sold. I don't want to use the word sold. I mean, they are technically um, into a household, and there's some conditions to this. Either the father is trying to get his daughter because he's not a very good provider for whatever reason, falls down on his luck, whatever, but he thinks he can make it, but it's another mouth to feed. So let me give her to a family that's doing well, that either the father or the son will end up marrying her and give her a good life. So that's another arrangement. So let's explore that for a little bit. All right. So you think, okay, when we think of enslaved people, and I'm using some modern terminology that I think is appropriate. I'm not doing it, because of wokeness or political correctness. I'm doing it because it's a good way to describe an enslaved person. Instead of saying a slave, what do we think of when we think of a slave? And this is really where these laws are designed to contravene. A slave is somebody who's got no dignity, who's less than a regular person, who's abused, etc. So when we say an enslaved person, key word on the word person, enslaved is the adjective. Person is still entitled to dignity. And that's where a lot of these laws come in. If a master beats the slave and maims the slave, they lose a tooth, you lose the use of an arm, you lose the use of an eye, they are immediately granted their freedom. So and part of it is really on the master, because this is a resource. This is a worker for you. Why would you hurt something or someone? I'm sorry, say microaggression. Why would you hurt someone who is working for you, who is benefiting you? Why would you wreck their ability or impede their ability to work for you, right? Stupid. But the idea of a young girl, a maiden, is that that girl will end up marrying either the father or the son. If they don't, then, and she hits puberty, she has the right to leave. So again, dignity, rights. People are treated like people, even though they are at the lowest rung of the socioeconomic structure. Dignity. So, and again, the girl does not get abused. She's there, and she's not there to be used either for any, let's just use the word, nefarious means. She is given respect too. And once she gets to that age of puberty where she is a viable wife, before she was a girl, now she's a viable wife. If they do not honor her with a wedding, then she goes free. She goes back to her father's house and whatever. So we want to establish that. But there's a lot of discussion in this portion about theft, which so a person, an enslaved person or a bonds person, somebody working off a debt, gets their dignity, and there's no theft here. And when I say theft, I mean a theft of an actual person. When we talk about no stealing in the Ten Commandments, why is that a big deal? Okay, yeah, okay, you don't steal from somebody. Okay, you wouldn't think it's that big of a deal, but they're talking about stealing a person. The commentators, the rabbis and the sages say they're really talking about somebody who is stolen, a person who is stolen, somebody who was kidnapped and sold into enslavement. That's the kind of stealing they're talking about. That's why that commandment is between do not murder and do not commit adultery. So it's interesting what they talk, then they go on and they talk about theft. If somebody steals something, they give back that plus whatever else. They talk about stealing somebody's reputation, not joining with others to commit a falsehood, not committing a falsehood yourself. Very important. We talk about when you embarrass somebody in person, in public, their face turns red, you're drawing blood. It's like you're murdering them, you're murdering their reputation. So, all of this are things that follow from the Ten Commandments. Okay, so thank you for listening. We had a great Tu B'Shvat again. Thank you for everybody that came out. Now we're planning on Purim and Passover. Stay tuned. Maybe we'll do Shabbat across America. I'm not sure. But again, stay tuned and thank you once again for listening.